Welcome to Yes and Land, where we say yes to the reality of what you're facing and and to the possibility, joy, and new chapters still ahead. We are excited today because we have with us a fantastic attorney, Kenton Walker, who is joining us. He happens to work at RCG Law Group, where I'm also at, and we're excited to hear some perspective from him today about different things like mentorship. But before we get to the topic of mentorship, if you wouldn't mind, Kent, giving us a little bit of background for you. I know you have a bit of a unique background to getting to be a divorce attorney that most people don't follow, a different path.
I started my professional career actually as a pharmacist. I did that. I worked at Johns Hopkins hospital system for about 6 or 7 years. Did a little bit of work in the pharmaceutical industry. I must have gotten bored at some point, so I decided to go to law school. Actually, I went to law school because I had a mentor in pharmacy school that was an attorney that taught pharmacy law. And that sort of sparked the idea, decided to do it. By the time I got out of law school, someone had, sparked the idea that I should probably be a patent attorney because of my technical background. So I did that, ended up primarily litigating patents for pharmaceutical companies. And did that for about 22 years, both as in-house counsel in pharmaceutical companies and at an AmLaw 100 firm for the last portion of that piece of my career. I was actually at a point where I was thinking about retiring completely, and then I realized I might get a little bored. So I thought about the areas of law that I really had always wanted to do but never had because I took a different path. And, family law was definitely one of them. And so I applied to a firm in the town where I live and got a job. And, it was a great experience. It was a busy little firm, so I learned a lot in a hurry. And when things got to the point there that, I was ready to move on and do something a little bit bigger, I found you guys and ended up here. And it's been awesome. I really like the way this firm is run. I really like the focus that you put on clients. They come first by far here. The opportunities and the people I work with are all awesome. People here that want to be here, that want to learn, that want to do a good job. And, that inspires me to be better
for sure
as well.
What's been the biggest difference for you between doing kind of the patent litigation and doing divorces?
I think actually, quite frankly, you're in court a lot more often. I'll put it that way. Patent litigation to these long, drawn-out things with tons of motion practice and discovery. And family law is a much quicker get to the end of it, relatively speaking. You're actually in court more frequently. The pace is just a lot faster. I've probably become a better litigator, in court on my feet in the few years that I've been doing family law versus, all the time that I spent doing patent law.
Yeah. What about when you think about like the clients that you're serving, how's that experience been different? How did the patent litigation stuff kind of inform you how to deal with divorces, and how has the clientele and the divorces been a difference from what you were doing before?
Patent law, obviously, you have, as a client, you have these giant pharmaceutical companies. So essentially your point of contact is going to be someone in their legal department. So you have a lawyer watching everything that you do. Obviously, in family law, you have the client, and I think patent law made me hyper aware of providing and producing a quality product because I knew it was going to be scrutinized. But the differences, I think, are these are human stories. Big pharmaceutical companies battling over billion-dollar drugs, it doesn't really tug at your heartstrings that much, but in family law, that some of the stories you hear and the relationships you build with people, you realize that what you're doing is going to impact what they do on a day-to-day basis going forward in their life. And, the things they care about the most in this world, their children, obviously, always the most important part of a family law case. It can have impacts on those children's lives. And I think that, that personal level of interaction with people is just, something you don't get in the big corporate law world.
Yeah. One of the things that we see too, though, with family law is that people can tend to burn out in family law because it can be really hard. So for you, what's kept you from burning out? What is it about family law that's kept you doing it? Even though maybe you were thinking about even retirement before, now you're still doing stuff and you're doing family law, you're doing divorce and doing it exceptionally well. What keeps you going even when it's hard?
I think at the first place I practiced family law, I could have seen myself getting burnt out. But I think the difference once I came here is I I knew a little bit about family law and my ability to sort of mentor others. Because, I mean, we have a wide range of experience levels here at the firm. And so, we have some people that have never really done family law. We have some people that only have a few years experience, and we have some people that, know everything and can do everything well. But I think I've kind of found my niche here as helping people that are less experienced, learn. And the way I look at mentorship, all it is for me is I'm sharing my experience. I can't tell people the best way to do something, and I don't know how they operate optimally and, what rings a bell for them as far as learning. But I can share how I did things and how I learned it. And, I try to not so much, teach rules as to teach the approach to any problem. If someone comes to me and asks me like, well, what do we need to produce for initial disclosures? Then I'm going to say, well, look at 26.1 and 26. That's the way a lawyer would look at it. What does the statute say we have to do? And start learning the statutes and knowing what they mean, because then when you have this question again, even if you forgot what I told you this time, you can go back and look. That's a better way at least that's the way I approach it. And I think, only have been doing family law for about 3 years. I go back when I'm helping people, and I'll look at a statute or a rule, and, there's things that I thought I remembered one way that aren't necessarily so. So I'm reinforcing things that I should know as well. So I'm learning during the process of helping someone else. I learn a lot too.
And so when you look at when you think about mentorship and kind of overall the overarching concept or principle of mentorship, for you, and I think you briefly referenced it, but what does mentorship mean in general? Like when we think about that as a concept in business, in professional lives, what does mentorship mean?
I think mentorship to me means, helping people perform at a higher level than they were when they came to you. And like I said before, I do it by sharing my experience. I get the feel goods because I'm helping. I'm doing something selfless, right?
Yeah.
And that always makes people feel good.
For sure.
To help someone else. So I get that out of it. And, I get reminded that I don't know everything sometimes and I have to relearn or learn for the first time things. But I think the goal at the end of the day is to make this law firm, a more efficient, a better firm. Yeah. Because the more people, help others get to a higher level of performance, then the better it is for the firm, the better it is for the clients that we serve. It takes things in a forward direction.
Yeah.
It's like that concept of always trying to get a little bit better. Even if you think you're good at something, you can always get better.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a growth mindset, right, as opposed to a fixed mindset. So when we think about mentorship, obviously, there's real values in both the mentee and the mentor. What do you think holds some people back? Why do oftentimes a lot of people not look for opportunities to mentor?
Like you said, family law is hectic and high-paced, and people get burnout. And I think, a lot of people, they're focused on doing their job and doing it well, and it can be overwhelming. I just had an experience on New Year's Eve where I got to stay up until about 11:30 working on a project. And, I think it's hard to sort of pause and take a breath sometimes and see that the mentorship is an opportunity for you to grow. It's also an opportunity for the whole firm to grow. And you just really, you got to take a pause and think about it. I know sometimes it seems daunting, like I'm going to waste all this time. What am I getting out of it? Well, making the firm a better place, making yourself a better lawyer, making your paralegal or any of the staff or some of the other attorneys, if you're mentoring them, better at what they do is pretty damn satisfying. Yeah. And if you can do that, if you can pause and breathe and look at the bigger picture, I think people would be more inclined to invest their time in mentoring. It's just you got to take that first pause and think about what's going to happen down the road, and not just the 10 things that are on your plate right now that you have to do. Yeah.
And one of the nicknames we've given you here is the paralegal whisperer, because you've done an exceptional job mentoring the paralegals, especially as we have some that are new to family law or new to our firm and the way that we do things. What are some of the key components of your mentorship of people like that in those instances that have helped you be patient, take the time to talk to them about your experiences? Like, what are the success factors for you as a mentor, that if somebody was saying to themselves, like, okay, I'm going to get on board, like I want to be a mentor, where do I start? What are the key things I should focus on if I'm going to try to help somebody else?
For me anyway, one of the first things I say to people when I start working with them or trying to help them on a skill or a particular project or whatever is don't be so concerned about being perfect and not making a mistake. I want everyone that I work with to know, yeah, there are mistakes. 99.9% of the time, it's a mistake that can be fixed. So don't let the fear of making a mistake keep you from either seeking mentorship or being a mentor. I'm going to make mistakes and then I'll fix them. So I think if you can kind of set that as a baseline and a tone for your interactions with people that you're mentoring, don't worry about it. We'll take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. It's more important to me that you're willing to work hard and you want to learn than you being perfect. With advice I've given you on how to do something, just relax a little bit and let it come and don't worry about the mistakes because we'll fix them.
And I think what that does is it helps to build that trust, right, with that individual when they know that they have the freedom to try, they have the freedom to make an attempt, and you're setting a baseline of like, it's okay if you make mistakes. I just want you to try, give your best effort, and it's okay that you make mistakes. We'll fix it and we'll fix it together. I think really helps to build that trust and that relationship so that they will. And then when you do have feedback for them, I think they're more willing to listen.
Yeah, and when there's mistakes, that's another opportunity to learn. Whenever there's a mistake that needs to be fixed, I like to try to sit down with whoever I'm working with and do a little postmortem on here's what happened, here's how the mistake got made. Was it just that you were rushing? Was it just you didn't understand what a rule was telling you to do? Let's look and see what that is, so that next time when we go down the same road and we're trying that same process, that we're attentive to what it was before that went wrong. And I do agree with you. Like the trust that you build with the people you work with by letting them know that you always have their back is it's huge. And it does turn people from being scared to try to people that will try because they know at the end of the day things are going to work out just fine.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're kind of alluding to, I think, that this is doing is it helps to build the right culture in an organization. So for you, what's the impact of mentorship on a culture? Why is that so helpful for building a real positive culture?
I think I'm going to go back to trust. I mean, it's an overused word, right? But when you build trust, there's something about that bond with the people that you work with that makes them willing to run through a wall for you. I like to say, I have one paralegal in mind that would probably run through a wall to get a job done for us. And when you can build that bond and that trust, I think it inspires people to work harder. It inspires people to do better. It inspires people to look at our core values and really sort of instill them in their fiber and their being that, I want to operate like this because we have core values, and I want to exude those core values because I know this is going to make the firm a better place. It's going to make me a better paralegal, attorney, support staff, whatever. And so, that's kind of how I look at it. That's the way. I mean, and then it also, just on a personal level, it builds a friendship.
Yeah.
And when you're friends with the people you work at, you don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to like everyone you work with. But when you are, that trust level, it's almost like you get to the point where you kind of start to think the same as the people. And, I can't, count the number of times I've asked someone to do something and they already knew what I was going to ask them and they're already working on it because, I've built that bond with them and they know what my next move is. So they're already on it before I even have to ask.
Yeah. I think developing sincere friendships, especially in a professional environment, just have a lot of positive impact on, wanting to go to work, wanting to show up and give it your best, knowing that you have other people there who you get along with and who have your back. When we think about how do we have, better friends at work or how do we have mentors at work, I think sometimes what it comes down to is what are we doing to be a better mentor? What are we doing to be a better friend? And then when we exhibit the characteristics and traits that we would like to have somebody else show us, it comes back, right?
Absolutely.
And so as you're mentoring folks in this organization, and they see the level of care you have, I think what starts to happen is that starts to come back to you as well, which hopefully you've seen, right? Because I know that there's a lot of people in our organization that have a really high degree of trust because you've taken the time with them. What's interesting here too is it's taken the time without titles, without having a formal mentorship program where it's something that you're supposed to do. What do you think people can do in their jobs and their organizations if they don't have a title? They're not a manager or a director. They don't have direct reports. How can they still find ways and opportunities to mentor others to create a better culture and a better environment?
I think, a lot of it has to do with, for people that necessarily, aren't in an authority position. I hate using that word, but I'm going to use it. If they can take the time to explain what they're doing and the why to what they're doing. I learn things about billing all the time. I have no idea how most of the billing works, but we have some people that perform that function for us, and I'll go to them with hey, I need this and this done, and they'll be like, well, this is how we do it. Here's why it's going to be tough to achieve what you want to achieve, and they kind of show me behind the curtain of why that is. So I think getting out there and when you're working with others, kind of explaining how things work, why we do things the way we do them, makes an opportunity for people that you might not necessarily think should be a mentor or in a classically defined organizational kind of setup. You wouldn't think would be the mentors, but they can. Everyone can. I learn things every day from all over this firm, and not just from the attorneys, not just about legal issues, just about how we do things on a day-to-day basis. And it helps me be a better attorney when I know that how things are going to work. It helps me manage client expectations better when I know for financial issues that this is how it's going to come out. This is when you're going to get billed. Just the little things that ultimately feed back into how I do my job.
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned as well is when we think about how mentorship can really work effectively, it's you're sharing the experiences. You're not telling them the way they have to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, here's my experience because I've done this or that before, and here's kind of what I did. Here's what I learned from it. Here's what I found out. And then it's just inviting them to be hungry for information, and then they can make a choice. And when that happens, when people don't feel like someone's telling them they have to do something a certain way, not making them feel dumb if they don't, right? Then that's where it's like, oh, I really appreciate that person's opinion and their advice. And maybe I don't do it exactly the way they suggested, but I've learned from that person's experience. Now I want to go back again the next time I have a question because their experience was actually really helpful and helped to inform the way that I could do it, but they didn't take my power away. They didn't take away my ability to analyze the situation and to take action on it. They simply were guiding me along the path. And I think that's sometimes what a good mentor does is guides them along the path.
Yeah, I mean, to me, being a mentor is synonymous with being a guide. I'm just guiding you through this thing. There's very few, hard and true facts about how we do something in the law. There's always the gray area, and there's more ways, as they say, to skin the cat than one. And so, and I try, I make a conscious effort when I work with people to be like, this is how I've done it in the past, but, there may be a better way. I'm certainly, not the expert on everything that goes on in family law or even an expert on everything that goes on in this firm. So if I can give those people that agency to do it the way they want to do it, just kind of set up some, guidelines for them, I think that's a more effective experience for them. It's a more effective experience for me. And like you said, it gets me return business.
Yeah, no question. And when we think about divorces, I think there are some parallels between being a divorce attorney and being a mentor. I mean, obviously, when you're a divorce attorney, there are definitive things you have to know and decide, right? You've got to set the strategy for your client, and you've got to know the law. But with the parallels that are, what do you see as being some of the parallels between being a divorce attorney and how you're helping your clients and being a mentor to people in your organization?
Oh, I think you're absolutely a mentor to your clients. You're guiding them through a divorce. You're sharing your experience. A lot of times, when this set of facts comes up, here's how I've my experience is here's how it has turned out in court, or here's why I would advise you to take this route and not that route, because here's what the law is, and that's going to kind of determine where this issue is going to end up. And so, I'm guiding you through a divorce, giving you some information on family law, sometimes probably more than you want to hear, sometimes probably not the answer you want to hear. That's a part of being a mentor too. Is sometimes you gotta deliver the unpleasant news, and that's part of being a divorce attorney for sure. The way people come into a divorce, seeing what they think is fair, and what's written in the statutes, and how court decisions have gone, may not really seem fair to some of our clients. But you still gotta lay that out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You got to tell them it all.
For sure. And as we do, right, as we're open and honest with our clients, as we're guiding them through it, we're doing the same thing with them, which is we're building trust with them. Because ultimately, if we want our clients to listen to our advice, they've got to trust us that we have their best interest in mind, that we're motivated in a way that's going to help them, even if it's hard truths that we provide. So what I want to move into next in this topic of mentorship is our next segment that we do, where we have some kind of movie tie-in. And the movie we're going to talk about today is the movie The Intern, with Robert De Niro, which, if you haven't seen it, you got to go see it. It's actually this really heartwarming story. It's really enjoyable. I remember watching it for the first time thinking, man, this is a really good flick. I really like it. So when this topic kind of came up, it just fits so perfectly for what this movie does. So for you, what are some of the parallels or tie-ins that you could pull from The Intern as it relates to mentorship and some of the things we've been talking about with mentorship?
Yeah, I think with that movie, and if you haven't seen it, it's about this older guy who's been retired for a while. His wife dies, and he signs up for this senior internship program, to get older people, retirees, get them back into the working world a little bit, give their life some purpose, keep them from sitting and going stir crazy in retirement with nothing to do. And the character in this, played by Robert De Niro, is just that guy. He's like a 70-year-old guy. His wife just died, like I said. And he signs up for this program, and he goes in, and it's a startup. It's a fashion company, online fashion company. They're talking about social media and hits and how things work, apps and all this stuff that he's not really familiar with, because he's been out of the working world, while a lot of that stuff was developing. So he enters initially, he's kind of like a fish out of water. He just doesn't get it. But he's he had a solid career in business, and he has a lot of wisdom, and he has a lot of experiences to share. And I think you see gradually he kind of becomes a mentor to the CEO, and she's very young. I mean, she's very fired up, but it's a stressful situation for her. It's her own company, a lot on the line. She's got stuff going on in her personal life that's distracting her, and he becomes sort of the voice of reasoning by sharing his experiences and the principles of how you do things. He may not know the technology, but he knows the principles behind how you should approach running a business. And they develop this bond, this friendship, this trust, where he could become sort of her, the intern becomes sort of her, her go-to, her guru on how to run the company.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when we think about, where we draw on for help, for assistance, and it sometimes can come from unique places. Right? With a situation like that, where this is a guy who really doesn't understand what the CEO would have thought is the major portion of the business, and yet by understanding what he actually does know, what he does have of value to bring to the table, it's actually quite immense. And I think sometimes we prejudge people, right? If somebody doesn't have this specific knowledge or that specific thing that they know, they must not know anything, when in reality, a lot of people have a lot of value they can bring to the table. It's just merely a matter of, are we willing to listen? Are we willing to be curious and find out what they have to bring to the table? And then suddenly relationships can really develop in really positive ways, like a mentor relationship, like a really good co-working relationship, where you can learn a lot from somebody else, regardless of what their title is, CEO versus intern, right? You couldn't be further away on a hierarchy chart, right, in an organization, and yet because at the end of the day, the CEO was willing to listen, was willing to understand that there was value there. Ended up being a really great relationship they had and helping make each other better, bringing, value and fulfillment to both.
Yeah. And I really liked the movie. I identified with the De Niro character quite a bit. Shocking fact, I am not the youngest person at this firm. And so, I do experience sometimes a little, philosophy on different generations on how things should work and how they approach their jobs and how I learned it, back in the day, when I was coming along. And, I think there's value for me and seeing a different approach to how you work. And I hope there's value in my experience of, the core principles of how you approach doing legal work and being a lawyer or being a paralegal, and how you approach building relationships with clients that transcend technology or, politics or whatever is different about one generation to the next.
For sure. Yeah, I think sometimes we are quick to think about or point out to ourselves differences that we have, when in reality, if we think also about the things that we have in common or the things that we can share or learn from each other, then again, we can find a little bit more fulfillment when we're focused more on those things. So I want to do a quick this or that with you. Okay, so just kind of your gut reaction on a this or that. You can defend yourself if you feel necessary. So here we go, a little this or that. This or that, briefcase or backpack?
Oh, backpack.
Backpack all the way. Okay,
Yeah.
So we're not like traditional Ben Whitaker briefcase. We are backpack.
Backpacks are just universal. I mean, you can use them for business. You can use them for travel. They just mine keeps my life organized. I think briefcases have more of a niche purpose.
Sure.
And so I'm always a backpack guy. Swiss Army, those things are indestructible.
They are. I recently made the change, and it was not an easy change for me to make. I had a Toomey briefcase bag that I used from the time that I first was going to court 15 years ago up through last year. And at the end of the day, it's just a little bit clunkier. It's a little bit harder to bring with. When I want to travel with it, it wasn't great for carrying. I've been thinking a long time about making it. I finally made the transition. I now have a backpack that I keep my laptop in that I also can use for travel. So I'm a convert. Backpack guy.
I feel a little judged in the courthouse sometimes. These guys with the nice leather briefcases or the sling satchels. And, I walk in with my backpack double strapped, walking down the hallway with my suit on. I'm fine with it.
Yep, but they are awfully versatile. You are definitely right there. Okay, next this or that. Showing up early or staying late?
Staying late.
Staying late. You're a stay late guy.
I'm more of I do get up early and I do a little work, early from my phone or, from home. But, I need a little time in the morning to acclimate to the day.
Sure.
But, and then at the end, sometimes I kind of get my second wind around 4 o'clock or so. And so sometimes, you just got to stay late. And I think there's a solitude about a lot of places because, in the 9 to 5 world, after 5, it gets pretty quiet.
Yep.
And, I really do enjoy that solitude. I even take that to the weekends sometimes. This place is very peaceful on the weekends.
For sure.
And I'm just way more productive.
For sure. It definitely makes sense. All right. Here's a big one. I know this is going to be, I'm really interested what you say on this one. Skiing or snowboarding?
Snowboarding.
Snowboarding. All right.
I learned to ski first. And then I married a woman who was like an expert skier. And my ego was crushed. And so to rebuild my fractured ego, I took up snowboarding and I focused on that a lot. And I think I got better, and I'm probably a better snowboarder than I am a skier. So snowboarding, however, my wife works at a resort that only allows skiing, and I get free passes there. So I will strap on the skis, for a free pass. Okay.
Well, how about this? Let's take a little derivative there. Skiing or backcountry skiing?
Oh, backcountry skiing for sure.
Okay.
There's just a lot more to it. Skiing is great. I love being at a resort and bombing the runs. But I think there's a sort of connection to nature you get with, it's essentially hiking with a set of skis strapped to your feet up. There's that solitude again, and you're out in nature. I mean, you have to be, you have to have there's an educational component because it can be unsafe, and you really have to take that in consideration. Sure. I mean, you learn more about which slopes face which direction and how likely they're gonna slide on you, and then there's health benefits. Like I'm kind of a workout nut, so that you get in a good cardio
for sure
before you take your run down. Yeah, that's a plus too. So yeah, definitely backcountry.
All right. How about this one? Hiking or biking?
Biking.
Biking.
Yeah.
Okay. So with biking, mountain biking or road biking?
Oh, mountain biking.
Okay, mountain biking guy.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to live in a place where there's, a trailhead two trailheads on either end of my street, so I can just, right out of the garage and onto the trail. So definitely mountain biking, and it keeps things a little more interesting. Road biking can get a little monotonous sometimes.
Sure.
There are people that love it, and good for them. I'm glad they enjoy it. But yeah, I need a little excitement. It's a lot like the backcountry skiing. It's like you put in a climb to get the fitness, and then you come down the hill to have some fun.
I love it. Okay, how about this one? Playing hockey or watching an NHL game?
Playing hockey.
Playing hockey.
I mean, I love watching hockey too, but there's something about playing hockey that just it gets me. I guess it's my form of meditation. I guess you'd say. When I'm playing, I'm only focused on one thing, and that's playing hockey. If I have problems, if I'm under stress, if something's been on my mind, it just goes away at least for an hour or so while I'm playing. So yeah, it's my meditation. Yeah. It's sort of my drug. So definitely playing.
Mine's a little longer. Golf has become that for me, and so it's funny because sometimes I'll have played around, and when I come home at night, my wife knew that I was out. She's like, "Well, what'd you talk about out there? How's so and so doing? How's their family? How's the wife?" I'm like, "Yeah, we didn't talk about that. We just played golf." It's like, "You didn't talk about anything?" We're like, "Well, we talked about the golf."
Yeah,
it was just nothing else exists, right? When I'm out there golfing, I'm just enjoying the moment, joking around with whoever I'm with, and just having fun time being outside and kind of forget about the other things. And that's kind of the way that golf's become that way for me, which is kind of fun. Although my wife definitely doesn't understand how I deal with it and how I operate when I'm out on the golf course. Okay, last this or that. Hot yoga or regular yoga?
Hot yoga.
Good old hot yoga.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not the youngest employee here, and there's something about the heat that just, loosens me up just enough so that I can do things that I probably couldn't do at room temperature.
Nice.
And and then I'm the sweating for some reason now. I never thought sweating would be something that I sought out, but there's something about ending up in a sweaty heap on a mat at the end of a class that just that's my thing now. I don't know why. I can't give it up.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, here's our rapid fire. So there's kind of the first thing that comes to your mind. Favorite movie?
Silence of the Lambs.
That's a good one. That's a classic. Favorite song?
Favorite song? Well, that's really a tough one. But I'm going to have to go with, of all time, rock and roll, Led Zeppelin.
Okay, Led Zeppelin. That's a good one to go to. Okay, how about favorite book?
My favorite book. That's another tough one. I'm a huge John Grisham fan, and the first one I ever read was A Time to Kill. So I love all his stuff, but since that got me hooked, I'm going to go with A Time to Kill.
Time to Kill, so good, so good. Okay, how about this one? I don't know if you're gonna have a good answer here, but we're gonna test you on it. Favorite Disney princess?
Favorite Disney princess? I don't think she's technically a princess, but I'm gonna go with Lilo.
We'll allow it.
Okay.
Absolutely, we'll allow Lilo. Yes, fantastic. Lilo's great.
That was all the rage when my son was in the Disney watching phase, and I love Stitch too, of course. Who doesn't love Stitch? But yeah, so I'm gonna go with Lilo.
And it's made a huge comeback because they did the live action just this year. And so my little girls who are 10 and 5 absolutely love Lilo and Stitch. So Lilo's a great answer. We will definitely take that as a Disney princess.
Okay, I'm glad that Lilo lives on because that was actually fun time for me when those kinds of things were coming out when my kid was young, and he loved it. And so by by osmosis, I had to love it too.
Yeah, absolutely. You embrace the things that your kids enjoy, and it's fun to see the joy that they have as they're doing things like watching those kinds of shows and getting those toys and playing and using their imagination. It's a lot of fun. All right, so kind of our kind of closing reflection here is if you could kind of sum up what a listener or viewer could take away from this conversation about mentorship. Maybe, what somebody could do this week or this month to begin being a better mentor. What would those suggestions be?
My suggestion would be to look for situations. It can be in your life. It doesn't have to be at work. Situations where you see someone, I don't want to say struggling, but someone that needs help. I always try to be very delicate in my approach. I don't want to be like, oh my God, you've just screwed this up. You obviously don't know what you're doing. You need someone to tell you what to do. But where someone might be, and if you're lucky enough, someone will ask for help. That's obviously the easiest way. If someone just comes and says, hey, I need to talk with you about this because I'm not sure what I'm doing. But to try to start that conversation with someone, and then just, my go-to line is, well, here's my experience when the same situation has come up before, and here's how I handled it, and here's what the result was. And you can do that, at home with your kids, with your wife, with your friends, anyone, or at work. But, just kind of observe, sit back and watch, and you'll be surprised at how you start spotting those situations where someone needs a little guidance. Maybe they're not going to ask you for it. Subtly say, someone's working on. I've seen people working on something kind of like, I hate doing financial declarations. In our business, that's a valid hate. But I'll say, well, here's how I always have done them in the past. Here's what I do, and I'm not really, too in their face about trying to shove how they should be doing things down their throat. I'm just like, here's how I've done them. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I agree. They are painful, but here's what I've done to get through them a little easier.
Yeah. So if I could boil it down, what I think that our suggestion could be is that I think number one would be sometimes to put down our distractions. I think sometimes we miss opportunities to help somebody else or mentor somebody else because we're too distracted, especially with their phones. So I would say kind of first potential actionable takeaway is, put down your phone, remove some of the distractions, look for an opportunity that somebody's in need. Look for an opportunity where somebody could use some advice or need some extra help, because they're all around us. And then when we do, here's my experience. And that's the line people go to. Here's my experience. We don't have to shove anything down their throat. We don't have to tell them they're doing all things wrong. We simply couch it as, hey, here's my experience. Here's something that I've learned. And then they can take it or leave it with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sharing your experience is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think people are generally more receptive to that than, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. Do it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you so much, Kent, for being on today and sharing this time with us. And thank you for joining us for Yes and Land, where we honor the real story that you're in and invite you into the next chapter with possibility and connection. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.